For many old school fans of the series, myself to a lesser extent, I come into the series a little bit later, but there is nothing quite like the original series and those iconic boss monsters that we all love seeing on TV once upon a time. None more so than the Dark Magician. Now, the Dark Magician, of course, we all saw this coming after the Gaia video, is going to be one of the honestly, one of the classic decks that benefits the most from Kashtira, because there's a lot of plays that are enabled thanks to the Kashtira cards. So this is the deck we ended up coming up with. I went through quite a number of different iterations before eventually landing on a solid strategy that I was aiming for. I was wanting to build a deck to where it's not just a Dark Magician deck with Kashtira in it. That's not what I wanted. I wanted an actual cohesive strategy. I wanted to look at Kashtira and think to myself, what does Dark Magician actually bring to the table for this deck? And what we ended up arriving on is the fact that the Dark Magician not only is essentially a level 7 that you can summon for free from deck, because you're going to be using your Magician Souls to send it to the graveyard to summon it out of the field, and you're running like 9 copies of Souls. So not only is it essentially a level 7 that you can almost guaranteed special summon from the deck, frame 1 every turn, it's one that you can always bring back off of Eternal Soul, and you can also banish cards your opponent controls every time you summon it, either normal summon it through your Kashtira Birth, removing the need for sacrifices, or special summon it off of your souls, off of your Eternal Soul. So that's the part of the deck that we decided to focus on most, is the circle, banishment, souls, just sort of circling. We removed things like the Magician's Rod because the competition over the normal summon was way too fierce. And this is the deck list we ended up landing on, which I'm a huge fan of this list. I think this list is actually, unironically, really good. Our initial list that we were trying out didn't really work out very well, but once we switched to this one and we finally sort of built this, we saw our win rate dramatically increase. Again, are you going to be able to climb the Masters with this? Probably not. It's a tough deck to make work. It is still Dark Magician, but don't get me wrong, I feel like when it comes to the Kashtira builds, again, you could just build Dark Magician and throw Kashtira into it. That's fine. You can still do like the Dragon Knight and all of those shenanigans. But this is as close to a hybrid Kashtira Dark Magician deck, complementing each other as best as possible as I could possibly think of. So whether or not you like this, or if you just like regular Dark Magician with Kashtira thrown in, whatever floats your boat, but this I think is definitely going to be one of the more interesting ways of playing it, and definitely one of the more fun. So if you're interested in this style of content, where we're taking these older decks and renovating them and innovating upon them, or maybe you like our more competitive builds that we would normally do on a more regular basis, again, feel free to subscribe. We put up new videos every single day. You're bound to see something you like. It's free, you might as well. But if you do have the means and you do have the desire to support the channel a little bit more, there is also memberships available to anyone who is interested, which again is a part of the channel that I'm looking to grow as much as possible, because as soon as we can get more members, it means that we can do more things for members. We can bring in more perks, more benefits. We can have member exclusive live streams, all of that fun stuff that I really want to get doing. But at the minute we've got 3 members, which I absolutely, heart goes out to those 3. Thank you very much. But we really need to be building that number up a little bit before we can do anything notable. So if you do have the means, I would appreciate every little bit of support we can get in running this channel. Short of that, like the video and let's get into the gameplay. Alrighty, getting into it here. Opening hand, not exactly the greatest. We play a ton of the level 7 Kashtira monsters, specifically because we really sort of need to see them in the opening hand, but unfortunately on this occasion we didn't. We do, however, have the ability to grab both Eternal Soul, and we already have Dark Magical Circle in hand, so we're going to use that to grab a Dark Magician, which is a very useful tool here because our Illusion of Chaos ends up getting Ash Blossom. That hurts a lot. But at the very least, we have our Eternal Soul, Magical Setup, and Dark Magician in hand. We're going to go for Rise Heart here, banishing Unicorn from the deck, going to banish 3 from our opponent, and we're just going to keep it on board for now. Again, we could have kept that in hand, absolutely, but again, we wanted to sort of start banishing our opponent's cards and just sort of seeing what they have, seeing if they would imperm it, if they would Veiler it, whatever. We're playing against Punk. Now that is a top tier strategy right now. We're going to go for the Foxy Toon, dropping itself to the grave, discarding Phantom Knights of Torn Scales. This guy is on some fucking nefarious type shit. We're going to flip up our Eternal Soul. We're going to summon out the Dark Magician, and we're going to hit that deer note. Luckily, your boy is a Punk expert. I know where the choke points are. Get fucked. Deer Note is out of here. We're going to draw for turn. We're going to draw into an Ash Blossom, which we're not too fond of. We're going to use our Illusion of Chaos, grabbing Magician Souls, shuffling back the circle that we already had, Magician Souls, then activating its effect, pitching a Dark Magician, summoning that same Dark Magician to the field. Now we're going to be able to trigger our Dark Magical Circle, banishing the back row, Link summoning into our the Dark Charmer, bringing their Ogre Dance to our side of the field. We're now going to use these two to go into Celine. Unfortunately, not enough spell counters to use its effect, but that's totally fine. We're going to bring back a Dark Magician off of our Eternal Soul, and at this stage, we normal summon Ash Blossom, use Ash and Celine. I sort of, at this stage, whenever I summon Celine, he had a response. So I'm like, okay, this guy's got Nib. I know this guy's got Nib. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Ash Blossom instead of the Dark Magician, because if and when he decides to activate the Nibiru, we will be able to keep our Dark Magician. And sure enough, there it is. Out comes the Nibiru, but we still do have our Dark Magician. He gives us a token. We're actually going to use these two as Link fodder for the IP Masquerena, and we're going to pass. We don't need to get overly aggressive right now, because we're going to be able to banish a card off of Eternal Soul, as well as shuffle something back off of our Masquerena. He goes straight to Battlefield thinking he's going to get away with that. Absolutely not. Get that shit out of here. Banishing the Nib. 2 cards in hand still. One of them being Kashtira Fenrir. What a mad lad. Just having the Fenrir. Fenrir is a huge threat against Dark Magician because it has the ability to banish your Eternal Soul. Now, the one thing I'm not sure of, and this is something you can tell me in the comments below, is if Eternal Soul is banished face down, does it still nuke the board? You tell me. I think it does. I haven't looked up the interaction. I'll probably know by the time I've uploaded this video, but ultimately, if you know that interaction, let me know down below. If that's not a spoiler, he ain't getting the chance to banish my damn shit. We're going to go for the Eternal Soul. We're going to summon back a Dark Magician. And the thing about this as well, because we're primarily using back row to continuously loop and destroy our opponents and banishing our opponent's cards, it means that we're not triggering monster effects, which means that the likes of Fenrir and Unicorn and things like that aren't getting the chance to use their effects, which is pretty awesome. Banishing the Fenrir, we're going to tribute too. We actually tribute summon the Unicorn because, again, my plan was to grab back the Kashtira Birth and then sort of start comboing a little bit. Unfortunately, our opponent did have an Ash Blossom. That does prevent that from going ahead. Kashtira Unicorn, then we're just going to use its effect. We're going to grab Birth. We're going to banish the Raising card from his extra deck there. Or sorry, no, we're not going to grab Birth. That's what get Ash. We're going to banish the Raising card from the extra deck. That means that even if he's to draw into the likes of the Sharkusai, he doesn't have any plays. He summons out the Fenrir into the battle phase. I don't know what he thought was going to happen. We're just going to use our Eternal Soul. We're going to banish the Fenrir before it even gets a chance to attack. I don't know what he thought was going to happen. We were not going to allow that shit. And there you go, beating Kashtira Punk. Now, you know from my own videos how powerful Kashtira Punk is. So for us to use Dark Magician, and we were using Dark Magician to beat that, feels good, man. Let's get in the game too. Now, this one was a bit of a wild one, so it was. We're going to start off with Ariana. Looks like a Labyrinth deck, except they're playing 60 cards, so something a little bit fishy is going on here. They're going to go Labyrinth, discarding the Tsuchinoko, which will trigger its effect to summon itself out of the field, which is very, very interesting. And Danger Labyrinth, except it's not where it stops. We're going to draw Kashtira Ogre for turn. We're going to start with Fenrir. They're going to go for a big welcome here off the bat, going for the lovely Labyrinth here. They're going to bounce Tsuchinoko back to hand. That's going to trigger off their Labyrinth. They're going to pump a card, and then the Servant is going to draw one and then potentially summon one. Chandelier adding itself back to hand here. So that's back there. Again, we can deal with a pop one. It doesn't really matter what he hits as long as it's not Eternal Soul, right? He decides to take out the Fenrir that's on the board, but that's fine. We got another one right where that one came from. Gonna grab a Rise Heart from the deck. We're gonna use the Illusion of Chaos. Gonna grab the Magician Souls, shuffling itself back into the deck. Magician Souls, and sending and summoning the Dark Magician straight from the deck. Now we're going to go Rise Heart summoning itself, going to banish a Unicorn, banish free from the opponent, bringing itself up to rank 7. Now we're going to go into the Ebon Illusion Magician. This card becomes way, way better in this version of the deck because now we're able to use its effect. We're going to drop a Dark Magician to summon a Dark Magician straight from the deck. Which means we're able to go into the battle phase, Fenrir, banish the lovely, take out the Servant. Now we're going to be able to attack with Dark Magician, banish his other card as well, and then swing directly for 5k. Unfortunately, not able to put up a... not able to fully put up a lethal damage. Unfortunately, we were just a little bit shy. If we had Unicorn, that likely would have been lethal to some extent, which is a little unfortunate. We also don't play Zeus in this particular version. I can't remember if I put it in since. Although with Shangri-La here, I don't know if Zeus would even be super worth it. But yeah, we're going to set Eternal Soul face down. That's going to give us our Dark Magicians back. We've got our Shangri-La here. They're going to set a big welcome Labyrinth, but I'm not too worried about it. Tsuchinoko going to summon itself out to the field after being discarded by the Chandelier. They're going to go big welcome Labyrinth, summoning out Ariana, bouncing back to Tsuchinoko. Their Lovely is banished, so they cannot bring it back. Their Chandelier and Ariana both going to activate. Chandelier adding himself back to hand, while Ariana is going to draw a card. And then potentially special summon a monster. They are going to special summon the Chandelier in defense. We're going to go the Shangri-La for the Unicorn. Monster Reborn activating its effect. They're going to steal our Fenrir, which is huge. The Fenrir is a problem. Then they tribute. I mean, look at this play. They tribute summon their Cypherean Driver, and using it and their Ariana, they go into the Chaos Angel, having both light and dark effects because of the Driver. Crazy, crazy play. Chaos Angel banishing the Unicorn on being summoned. Fenrir going to search their deck for another Fenrir. They are playing Kashtira themselves. Battle Phase going to take out the Shangri-La and then swing into the Illusion Magician. 1000 damage over the Illusion. We're in a rough spot. We unfortunately are not loving life. We're going to summon out the Ogre. We're going to use Kashtira Preparations here. We're going to grab Preparations. He's going to banish the Ogre. That's fine. We're going to go Illusion of Chaos here. Grabbing the Magician's Rod. We have not yet normal summons. We're going to bounce back the Illusion of Magician. Normal summon Rod. Grab Dark Magical Circle. Activate the Circle. Unfortunately, there's the Twin Twisters. Out of everything that this guy could possibly have had, he Raw Dogs the Monster Reborn and the Twin Twisters in a 60 card deck. What a fucking mad lad. He was just better at the game, wiping out the back row, and at this stage our options are ridiculously limited. We are going to continue trying to play though. We got Kashtira Birth. Kashtira Birth going to activate, but unfortunately Big Welcome Labyrinth bouncing it back to hand is going to prevent the effect from resolving. So once again we're left without any plays, and just like that, GG's. There's very little we could have done in the face of our own Fenrir and his Chaos Angel protecting his monsters from battle, his Chaos Angel being unaffected by activated effects. Just absolutely mental, for sure. Very well played. Guy just had the right cards at the right time. He just had the plays. You know what I mean? The danger play with the Big Welcome and the Chandelier and things, that's really cool. I really like that idea, and I might toy around with that in the future with like a sort of combo-y, aggressive Danger Labyrinth build. I think that could be pretty funny. It'd definitely be a better way of abusing the Chaos Angel than the regular version, that's for damn sure. But either way, we lost. Let's get into game 3. Alright, getting into game 3, and this guy was on some fucking nefarious shit right here. We're going to use the Illusion of Chaos, going to grab a Magician's Soul, shuffling back one of our Rise Hearts, activating the Salvation, grabs us an Eternal Soul. We're going to send Dark Magician to the graveyard, summoning it out to the field. We of course do have Soul Servant, which is going to be able to place the Dark Magical Circle on top of our deck, which we can then draw out of the hand thanks to the Soul Servant. We're going to activate it as well. Normal summon the Rise Heart, banishing Unicorn. Going to get Impermed. Now that is pretty bad, because unfortunately then no rank 7 for us, but again we do have to put the Dark Magician in the graveyard, so out comes IP Masquerena. That just means that it's in the graveyard ready to be revived off of Eternal Soul, so we at least have something set up. They're going to activate Imperm on the IP. Unfortunate, what are you going to do? Then they go for Fossil Dyna and Mystical Space Typhoon. This guy is on some bullshit right now, popping the Eternal Soul into the battle phase, wiping out the Masquerena. God damn. That is a problem. We're going to draw a card. We're going to draw into Kashtira Birth, the perfect card. That is the best card we possibly could have drawn. And why is that? Well, the Illusion of Chaos can do more than just grab Magician Souls. It can grab the Dark Magician, which means we can now normal summon it without sacrifices, triggering off the Dark Magical Circle to banish a card. We're going to banish that monster of his. Then we're going to use Kashtira Birth to bring back the Unicorn from the banish pile. It then searching for another Kashtira Birth to thin the deck down a little bit. We're going to swing. We're going to get hit with a Magic Cylinder. This guy's playing in 2005. He is not in the same time zone as us. But we're going to go into Shangri-La here. And then we're going to pass turn. Now, Shangri-La is going to be where we start to generate advantage, because we can start bringing out the likes of Fenrir. He's going to go Extravagance here, banishing cards to draw 2, Pot of Greed. We're going to go Shangri-La, locking up one of his zones. We're going to banish 3 cards from his graveyard as well, which is going to allow our Shangri-La to lock up another one of his zones. So we're just banishing a whole bunch of cards, which is nice. Locking him up. They're going to go for Swords of Revealing Light. And DD Warrior Lady, you don't understand how, like, amazed I was that this guy was even here. DD Warrior Lady wiping out the Shangri-La. I guess in his head he was like, oh no, he can't do nothing, I've got Swords of Revealing Light. And to an extent he would have been correct, but unfortunately for him, we're just better at the game, and we just draw into the Magician's Souls. We're going to bring back Unicorn. Unicorn gets searching for our 3rd and final copy of Birth just to thin down the deck even more. We're going to pitch an Illusion for our Souls. We're going to bring back the Dark Magician from the graveyard using the Dark Magical Circle, banishing Swords of Revealing Light. Now we're going to go into Dark Armed because that Facetime has to be something. We're going to remove a material, pop it. Turned out to be Wall of Disruption. This guy's a goddamn Duel Links player. We're going to go Rise Heart, banishing Ogre, boosting up to 7, and at that stage our opponent realizes that, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't play in 2005. Even still, that game showed off a lot of the sort of core mechanics and things that I wanted to show off in the deck, and again, a lot of those plays would also work against a lot of modern decks, but I also couldn't not show off that game, right? I couldn't not show off DD Warrior Lady, Magic Cylinder, Swords of Revealing Light. You know what I mean? Damn. Anyways, into game 4. Alrighty, our 4th and final game is, as you could possibly imagine, a Kashtira matchup. This deck is very popular right now. They're going to use their Fenrir to grab a Raise Heart. We do have Maxi active, so I doubt they're going to go too crazy here. Kashtira Birth following a normal summon of a Unicorn in addition to their Fenrir. And they're simply going to set 2 and pass. Maxi, at the very least, scaring them out of making any crazy plays. But now we have a little bit of a board to contend with here. We're going to grab Illusion of Chaos here. Illusion of Chaos activating its effect. We're going to grab Magician's Souls from the deck. We're going to shuffle it back. Now Unicorn is going to get a little peek at the extra deck. Going to banish a card. That's fine. Kashtira Birth then activating. We're going to use it to normal summon the Dark Magician out to the field. We're going to go straight to battle to wipe out the Fenrir first and foremost. Now that that card is gone, we can actually make some plays, sending out our secondary Dark Magician, bringing it out to the field. So now we got 2 Dark Magicians. First to go into Shangri-La. Now we're going to use the Raise Heart. Raise Heart summoning itself out to the field. We're going to banish a Unicorn from deck, banish 3 from his to boost up to level 7. Now we're going to lock up one of his zones, Kashtira Birth, bringing back the Unicorn that we just banished, grabbing, of course, the Kashtira Birth, so we can go into Diabolosis. Diabolosis then is going to get impermed. Now that is unfortunate, but ultimately fine, because it means that he doesn't have imperm for this turn, and he's not able to stop our Shangri-La. We go for Maxi, actually getting hit with an Ash Blossom here, which, I'm not too sure how I feel about that one, but ultimately it's not the biggest deal in the world, because now he doesn't have Ash Blossom for Shangri-La, you know? Silver Linings, we're going to go for Shangri-La, going to bring out the Unicorn directly from the deck. Could have possibly have brought out a Fenrir, might have been better, but ultimately we chose Unicorn. The reason we didn't go Fenrir is because he literally would have just gone Battle Phase and swung at it. That's why, I remember now. Unicorn going to grab their Kashtira Birth from the deck. Again, they're playing multiple Birth because of course they are. Is definitely the right thing to be doing. Raise Heart, bringing out, banishing to boost up its level. Going to go Big Eye. This is very unfortunate because they're going to detach material, stealing our Shangri-La. Now they're going to go for preparations, bringing back the Ogre that they had banished. Birth then bringing out the Ogre in the hand. They're going to banish Diabolosis. Shangri-La going to start locking up our zones. Unicorn going to get a little peek at their extra deck. And of course, banish any card among them. We're going to banish one of their Diabolosis. They're going to start locking up our zones. They're going to banish a card from our deck here. Checking the top 5. Going to banish a card. I can't remember what they hit. They hit Soul Servant. Locking up 2 of our zones. They're going to swing in with Ogre. Swing in with their second Ogre for 28 to the face. Me in phase 2. Now they're going to go into Diabolosis, the Mind Hacker. Diabolosis then activating. Going to banish a Diabolosis from our extra deck. Locking up an additional zone. Triggering Diabolosis to banish again. So they're putting us in a very, very rough situation here where they're locking up 4 of our monster zones. We have 1 zone remaining. Can we actually get to use it before we get fucked up? They're going to go Shangri-La, summoning out a Unicorn here. Main phase 1, we activate Birth. We're going to bring back the Unicorn from our graveyard. Birth then activating to banish a bunch of cards from our grave. And then our Birth is going to banish the stuff from his grave. Shangri-La going to continue to lock up our zones. Now, Diabolosis, I believe, is also going to activate here once again. I could be wrong, though, but at this stage, again, there's zero possibility of us winning this game. With so many of our zones locked up and zero plays available to us, we have to concede. There's nothing we can possibly do into that board, short of just hoping and praying to draw an imperm. But that's assuming we even got another turn, which wasn't going to happen thanks to Fenrir. So, it is what it is. What can you do? Sometimes your opponent just has the better cards. Let's get into the deck profile. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, this likely isn't going to be reminiscent of any Dark Magician deck you've seen in recent history. And the reason being, we have gone at it with the express purpose of maximizing its effectiveness alongside the Kashtira cards. So we've focused purely on the cards that actually provide synergy. So the primary engine is, of course, around special summoning the Dark Magician as consistently as possible from the deck to put up an additional level 7, while also putting it in rotation for your Eternal Soul and Dark Magical Circle to continue to banish cards. So let's talk about the Dark Magician. Well, let's talk about hand traps first. We're just running standard anti-Maxi package. We got the triple Maxi, triple Ash Blossom, double Cult By, and a singular Crossout Designator. That's all we're running. You can do whatever you want with that information. If you have the cards, run them. You really don't like Maxi. No deck does. Like, even if you look at it from the perspective of, well, this deck doesn't special summon much, even special summoning twice is Pot of Greed. Would you Ash Blossom a Pot of Greed? Of course you would. So why wouldn't you want to negate Maxi? So, that's the hand traps out of the way. Let's talk about Dark Magician. Dark Magician, of course, just being a vanilla level 7, what makes it powerful in this context is, of course, its support. We've got Magician's Souls. Magician's Souls can special summon itself, or can basically do one of two things. You activate it in hand, you will send a level 6 or higher spellcaster from the deck to the graveyard. Then you will either A, special summon this card from your hand, or B, send this card to the graveyard and special summon a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from the grave. So this card is here to basically help turbo out your Dark Magician, where you're going to reveal it, send a Dark Magician, discard, summon the Dark Magician, and then get comboing. It does have a bunch of other effects which sometimes come up. Like, if you do end up summoning this card, you can send up to 2 spells or traps from your hand or field to the graveyard to draw that many cards. Sometimes it's a useful way to get rid of bricks, but I very seldom find myself using that effect in this particular deck because we're much more concerned with turboing out level 7s. We have Magician's Rod, just the one of. I initially was playing 3 of this card, but it was competing a lot for the normal summon thanks to Kashtira Birth. So we decided to cut this card down. It is searchable from the deck. We're basically running 7 copies, which I'll get to in a second. But basically, on normal summon, you can grab a spell or trap from your deck to your hand that mentions the Dark Magician on it. That's very important because the whole point of our play, basically, is the advantage the Dark Magician brings to Kashtira over any other level 7 extender is the Eternal Soul and Dark Magical Circle being able to continually loop and banish. It helps contribute to the long game, which is what Kashtira wants to win in their current state. They don't have their Arise Heart, they don't have their crazy cards, which means they need to win the long game, and Dark Magical Circle definitely plays very heavily into that strategy. So Circle being a one-of, searchable one-of that can help search for your spells and traps, definitely pretty good. I wouldn't play more than one of this. I was playing it at 3, far too bricky, for sure. We've got the Illusion of Chaos. Illusion of Chaos will basically reveal itself in hand. You'll grab any Dark Magician or Dark Magician related monster, being your Dark Magician himself, Souls, or Magician's Rod. You'll add that card to hand and then shuffle 1 card in your hand back into the deck. Normally himself, but sometimes if you've got like 2 copies of another card in your hand you really don't want to be there, you'll just shuffle one of those back instead, like one of your bricks. And you've got 3 copies of Preparation of Rites to search for your Illusion of Chaos. Non-once per turn spell card to search for. It basically just acts as 6 copies of the Illusion of Chaos. So these 2 cards combined means that you're essentially playing 7 copies of Magician's Rod and 9 copies of your Magician's Souls. Pretty straightforward stuff. We now, into the spells and traps, we have a few here. We have Magician's Salvation and Eternal Soul. Magician's Salvation on activation will set an Eternal Soul directly from the deck. That's the only reason this is here. Think of it as a third copy of Eternal Soul that is sendable for Magician's Soul's effect and is That's pretty much it, really. I mean, it has a bunch of other text, but that's not usable in this version of the deck. So it basically just sets Eternal Soul from the deck. We got Dark Magical Circle. Dark Magical Circle, when activated, will check the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add then from those 3 cards a Dark Magician or a spell or trap that specifically mentions the Dark Magician. Add it to your hand. You're not running a ton of targets for Circle in this deck, so often that little search effect is going to whiff. You're very rarely going to add anything off of that, but it is still a neat little thing. Its primary effect is its second effect, where once per turn when you summon a Dark Magician, you get to target a card your opponent controls and banish it. That is the main benefit, because not only can you trigger that every time you special summon it off of Eternal Soul, off of Magician Souls, whatever it is, you can also, thanks to Kashtira Birth, just normal summon the Dark Magician to trigger the Dark Magical Circle, like you saw in Game 3. So Dark Magical Circle, once per turn banish, is definitely awesome, contributes to the overall strategy of Kashtira by winning the long game. We've got Soul Servant, which will place any Dark Magician related card on top of the deck. You can also banish it from the graveyard to draw cards equal to the number of different Dark Magician Girls, or Palladium monsters in your graveyard, which essentially just means that you just search your deck for a card. In practice, that's what it does. You activate it, you place like Circle on top of your deck, then you banish it from the graveyard to draw 1, and bang, you just searched your deck for Circle. It's just a really convoluted... It does more in actual Dark Magician decks, because you'll be playing a Dark Magician Girl, which makes a Pot of Greed, or if you're a Mad Lad, you can play Mahad and draw even more cards, whatever. But in this deck, it is literally just search your deck for one of your spells or traps. We've got Eternal Soul then to round it out. Eternal Soul, every Dark Magician in your monster zones are unaffected by your opponent's card effects. It makes all of your Dark Magicians a towers, which is honestly great. You can also once per turn special summon a Dark Magician from your deck, from your hand or graveyard, which is how you're going to repeatedly banish cards off of Dark Magical Circle. You'll just summon a Dark Magician once per turn, banish a card, try to send it to the graveyard for next turn, and then use this during your opponent's turn to banish another card, and so on and so forth. You're just going to use this and your Fenrir and your Unicorn to whittle down your opponent over time. So that's the Dark Magician cards. Really not that much to talk about. It is really straightforward. And the Kashtira cards I've talked about 1,000,001 times, but I'll very, very briefly recover them here. If you want an in-depth breakdown, check our previous videos. Fenrir, Unicorn, and Ogre, 3 primary Kashtira monsters, can all special summon themselves to the field. If you control no monsters, they all search for a card. Fenrir searches a monster, Unicorn searches a spell, Ogre searches a trap, and they all have an effect that activates in response to your opponent's monster effect or whenever they declare an attack. Fenrir will banish a face-up card in the field, Unicorn will banish a card from their extra deck, and Ogre will banish a card among the top 5 in their deck. Razeheart is the exception, of course. Razeheart can special summon himself from the hand if you control a Kashtira monster, but that does lock you into Exceed summoning only for the rest of that turn, which realistically is all you're doing in this deck, so that doesn't really matter. Razeheart then can banish a Kashtira monster from your deck to banish the top 3 cards off your opponent's deck to then change its level to 7. Now that's very useful in combination with things like your spell card, Kashtira Birth. Kashtira Birth has a couple of effects. Number 1, first and foremost, you can normal summon level 7s without tributing. That's a large part of why Dark Magician actually works with this deck, because now you're not super reliant upon other methods of summoning this guy. He's no longer a brick, he is actually conducive to your primary combos. So yeah, Birth at 3, absolutely. You can also, during your main phase, special summon back a Kashtira monster from your graveyard or banish pile, and if your opponent activates a spell card while you control a Kashtira, you can target up to 3 cards in your graveyard, banish all 3. Great. And lastly then, we have Kashtira Preparations. During either player's turn, you will special summon a Kashtira monster from your hand or banish pile. Great in combination with Max C to bring out a Fenrir during your opponent's turn, which is awesome. And if you already control a Kashtira monster, and this card was already faced up, if your opponent activates a trap card, you can look at their hand and banish 1 card in their hand, which is great against the likes of Labyrinth. It's great if your opponent's playing Imperm, all of these big cards that are very popular right now. So that's the main deck. Again, I know we sort of blitzed through that, but there really isn't that much to talk about, and the extra deck isn't very different. Big Eyes here, rank 7, can steal an opponent's monster once per turn. The Ebon Illusion Magician is probably the only card that some people aren't familiar with. So this card can detach an Exceed material to special summon a spellcaster normal monster from your hand or deck. So it basically summons a Dark Magician from the deck, which can be helpful for triggering Circle. but it also has another effect where if you declare an attack with a normal monster, a normal spellcaster, you get to banish a card in your opponent's field. So that's another bit of removal. Love this card, absolutely. It's much better in this version than it is in regular Dark Magician, so absolutely, use this card while you can, it's really good. We've got Diabolosis. Diabolosis will do Diabolosis things. Again, I've talked about this card non-stop. Once per turn, look at your opponent's extra deck, banish a card. If it destroys a monster by battle, you'll banish a card during the end of the battle phase. And if a card is banished face down while this card is in the field once per turn, you get to banish cards from your opponent's deck equal to the number of cards currently banished face down. So you'll use this just to banish a bunch of their resources, clear out their deck a bunch. Again, I've talked about this non-stop. If you want a better showcasing of this card as well as this card, check out our pure Kashtira video where we talk about it in much more depth. But in this, they're just sort of thrown in here because you can play them. They're really not the win con, for sure. I really hate relying on this card as a win con. It just feels wrong. It feels toxic. I don't like it. So I try to avoid relying on Shangri-La as much as I can as a win con, like the zone locking bullshit. I hate that. So I try to make my win cons as alternative as possible so that I can make sure that not only am I having fun, that I can try to make it a little bit more fun for my opponent as well. Because at the end of the day, this is a two-player game. Both people need to play. If you hate going up against something, if you hate seeing something, then your opponent's going to hate seeing that same thing as well. You can leave an example of that down below in the comments. Tell me down below, what is your least favorite thing to go against? What would you, as a player, not even do to somebody else? What card would you not play? Like, think Rongo. Think Shangri-La. Think, you know what I mean? What strategy is so toxic that you wouldn't even do it to somebody else? But anyway, I digress. Dark Arm Dragon. Pop a card, not once per turn, detach material, banish a monster from the grave, pop a card. Pretty straightforward stuff. I really like this card. I think this card's awesome. Shangri-La. During your standby phase, special summon a Kashtira monster from the deck. It can protect itself from destruction by detaching a material, and whenever a card is banished in your opponent's possession face down, you get to target a zone, a monster or spell or trap card zone, and make it unusable so long as this card remains face up. That's why I don't like this card. I think this card's toxic as hell. Don't like it. And then we just have a bunch of generic Link stuff. We got Link Haribo to use with souls. We've got IP. The main purpose of these cards is to make sure you can put your Dark Magician into the graveyard so you can bring it back off of Eternal Soul to continually loop your Dark Magical Circle. So IP to put it in the grave for Unicorn on the follow-up turn. Dark is here for a little access code line where you can go Dark, bring back one of their monsters to go into Selene. Selene then brings back Spellcaster from the graveyard. So this card, when summoned, will gain spell counters equal to the number of spells on both players' fields and in the graveyards. Then you can detach 3 to summon a spellcaster from the graveyard in defense, and then you'll use this card and that spellcaster to go into Access Code Talker, and then Access Code Talker pops a bunch of cards and swings for 5,300. Unicorn, of course, during your opponent's turn, you'll summon it off of IP to spin a card back into the deck, and Avramax is just here. I don't even think that you can realistically use Avramax very easily here. Like, it would have to be like IP Dark. But it is usable, so I threw it in. But if you have something else you'd rather play, you can play it. If you want to play like a second Eben, maybe, you can do that. But whatever it is you want in that final slot, it really doesn't matter. The extra deck is not the point of this deck. The main point of this deck is looping the Dark Magician constantly, looping your Fenrir's, bringing out your Unicorns, being able to go into these big Exceed monsters. So yeah, that's the deck. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe to catch more videos as they're coming out. Like I said at the beginning, new video every single day. So if you want to be interested in that, absolutely hop on. We also live stream on a regular basis as well if you're interested in live content and commentary, which is an awful lot of fun. Again, if you got this far and you enjoyed what you're watching, please like the video as well as consider joining us as a member if you have the means of doing so. Every little bit of support really does help out. I really do appreciate it. And again, if it's within your means of doing so, again, a little bit of support goes a long way. But anyways, that's going to do us for today. And I guess I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.